Hi, good
Peter.
afternoon, everybody. Yep, thanks, Jamie. Thank you very much for coming. Do you want to put it in presentation mode there, Jamie? Thank you very much. The topic of our talk is teaching technical communication. We thought that kind of lent itself nicely to the theme of the conference. And so we're going to talk about, introduce you guys to what teaching technical communication is all about. Next slide. Okay, so in the first part, I'm going to talk about what technical communication is, and then I'm going to look at different types of genre in the technical communication field. And then Jamie's going to talk about the characteristics of technical communication and why it's important. And if we have time, we'll touch on assessing technical communication. Next slide. Okay, so technical communication is very different from teaching general English or teaching academic English or general for academic purposes. It's very different. It's all about, technical communication is all about communicating technical information. I like this explanation here. It's about explaining complex products or processes in an accessible way. So technical communication needs to be accessible so that people can understand it easily. In Johnson Sheehan textbook, he describes technical communication as a process of managing information in ways that allow people to take action. So people can only take action if they understand it. And of course, it's common to many different disciplines. It's not just computer science. It's common to hard science, soft science, engineering, technology, medicine, law, business, design, education, art. In fact, it's difficult to think of an area that is not influenced by technical communication in some way. So let's move on then to look at some of the different types of genre in technical communication. 2.1 is correspondence, and I put a couple of questions marks there because personally, I don't think this is part of technical communication. I think things like letters, memos, emails, text messages, and announcements should be part of a business course or a professional English course. However, because these things are not actually taught in a lot of courses, they often appear in a technical communication course. But in reality, they're probably not really true technical communication. However, 2.2 is. This is where we start getting into the genre for sure. Technical descriptions and specifications. So these are things like product specifications, reference manual. When you buy your new BMW and it comes with a big thick manual, that's technical writing. When you buy your new iPhone and it comes with a manual, that's a reference manual, and also warning labels as well. A large part of technical communication is instructions. So any type of instruction manual, how to make something work, how to put something together is technical writing. Owner's manual, user guides, technical guides, assembly guides, quick start guide, all those instruction type materials. Another area that we picked up on was the technical support. So online help when you're not quite sure how to do something and you're looking online for help, maybe watching a how-to video, how to do something video. And also troubleshooting guides and frequently asked questions. I think we've got a couple of examples of those coming out with Jamie. So all of that is technical communication. 2.5, 2.6 is a bit of overlap here with business communication. Rana in her talk mentioned about giving her students reports to write in an ESP course. And of course, that's a totally valid thing to do. That's a great thing to do. In technical communication, we break up reports into progress reports, status reports, briefings, white paper, and incident reports, and more analytical reports that require some form of analysis or data input, such as a recommendation report, an evaluation report, or a feasibility study. The 2.7 is proposals. A very common part of technical communication is writing proposals, and these could be either solicited where you're asked to do submit a proposal, or it could be unsolicited, where you actually you have an idea and you submit a proposal that you think is worth doing. And then, of course, there's other things like presentations in real time, presentations recorded, poster presentations, multimedia presentations, presentations that continuously run. So all of that should give you an idea of what technical communication is. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jaime, who's going to highlight that in further detail.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss some of the characteristics that we see in technical communication. So first of all, technical communication is genre-based. We can say this is true about all text, but it's especially evident when we look at a technical text. Technical texts are purposeful. I always joke with my students that nobody ever reads something, a technical text for fun. Nobody sits down after a hard week with an instruction manual. You're reading to achieve a task, whether it's to install new software, migrate data, make a technical decision. There is a purpose that informs how this text is created. It also means we need to consider our audience, the reader. Does the person reading the text have prior knowledge and experience of the area? Will they understand terminology, or will you need to provide definitions? What information will they need? What would be considered superfluous? Another aspect to consider is the context within which the text will be read. Again, if we use instruction manuals, this is a key feature of how and why instruction manuals are formatted the way they are. The vast majority of people, when following a procedure, do not read from the beginning to the end before beginning the task. The majority of people read step 1, complete step 1, read step 2, complete step 2, and so on. And so the text is produced with that in mind. Secondly, technical communication must be accessible. Since it is used to achieve a purpose, it must be formatted in such a way that it successfully helps the reader navigate and find the information that they need. So again, this goes back to technical communication being action-oriented, something Peter mentioned. Technical readers are motivated by a need to accomplish something. So as we've seen in the text types that Peter mentioned, technical communication tends to be highly visual. So whether through incorporating diagrams like the one we see on the screen, the use of white space, or other design features such as alignment or grouping. It should also be global. In an increasingly internationalized world, technical communication must be cognizant of the needs of a multicultural audience. And our students need to be able to communicate clearly across cultures. They're almost certainly going to be working in multicultural contexts, whether they're here or in another country. And so texts need to be able to communicate cross-culturally. Thirdly, technical communication is collaborative. So this means our students are expected to work in teams to achieve long and complex projects. This is in order to prepare them for a workplace where they have to achieve long and complex projects working together. So in order to achieve this, we introduce and familiarize our students with a variety of collaborative platforms and softwares. We get them to use things like Google Documents or Forms, platforms like Notion or Perusal or Quip to help them to create their assignments. This helps them to develop their project management skills. And as you can see on the screen, this is a screenshot of a current group of my students. I've just crossed out their names so that it's a bit more anonymous. But my students are using these tools to break their project into manageable tasks, to assign groups, to share their workload, and to maintain accountability. When we are teaching online, we also use video conferencing software to help accomplish this collaboration. Finally, technical communication is interactive. IT is a field that is especially in flux. So change is constant, and that is also true of technical documents. Increasingly, we're seeing new forms emerging as modalities are shifting and new formats are used to achieve old purposes. So Peter mentioned the genre of technical support and some of those examples. And this is an evolution of the text-based procedural writing. It uses increased modality to enhance the user's ability to follow a procedure or a process. So why is technical communication important? Well, our textbook would define it as being the cornerstone of the technical workplace. But this is also borne out in the literature. In 2020, there was a major study of over 140,000 job advertisements. Communication skills featured prominently as the most consistently in-demand skills. Oral communication skills were required in over 28% of the job ads. Nearly a quarter of the job ads required effective written communication skills. Collaboration skills were mentioned nearly as often, indicating that these are really high-value employability skills. And so this is something of extreme importance that we're preparing our students for. Data also shows that communication skills development continues to be an area of need. Another study in 2006 found that nearly half of all two-year degree graduates and over a quarter of four-year degree graduates do not have the requisite level of written communication skills. And that's why employers perceive this gap, and then they emphasize these skills as essential when they are writing advertising and when they're advertising for new positions. So clearly, technical communication is a key skill. This is extremely important. All right, I'm going to pass it back over to Peter now. He's going to discuss very briefly how we assess.
Thanks, Jamie. So yeah, just very briefly, you know, as you can see, this genre is quite significantly different from general English or English for academic purposes. So the assessment needs to reflect that. The assessment should be learner-centered. It should be authentic. That means it should replicate what students will actually have to do in the workplace, and the curriculum and the material should reflect that as well. One thing we like to focus on is a scenario-based assessment that's thematically linked. So we have one type of a scenario that runs through an email task, which leads into a report, which leads into a presentation, and it's all thematically linked. And it's very collaborative, as Jamie mentioned earlier. The assessment's task types could include things like case studies, research assignments, reports, projects, and instruction manuals. I find that students really enjoy the instruction manual part of the course. They're really creative, and they produce awesome instruction manuals and presentations, which our students are very good at doing as well. Which leads us to the end of the presentation. And I think we have some time for questions there, Bill.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie and Peter, as well as thank you. We have some time left, and let's see whether there is any question in the chat box. So it is a question from Tony Myers to everyone. What is the biggest challenge of teaching technical communication to undergraduates?
Well, I think for me, in my experience of teaching technical communication, one of the issues is that the point of progression in terms of their disciplinary knowledge. So their knowledge of IT is still quite nascent. And so we're teaching them how to write and how to convey information, and they're still grappling with understanding it. And I think that's one of the reasons that, as Pete said, the instruction manual is something that students really love doing, because it's very achievable for them, but it also really helps them to get the idea that, you know, text has to be formatted a certain way, that all of these decisions are audience informed, and that it, you know, that it matters how they present content to make it comprehensible for their reader. Anything to add, Pete?
No, I was just thinking about language maybe being one of the obstacles. You know, it's an obstacle for a lot of us who teach in the disciplines and the majors is there could be language issues. But I also think maybe one of the things is getting the students to believe that they can actually achieve something that's quite different from what they've ever done before. And when you hit them with the report and instruction manual and say it's got to be 20 pages long, they freak out in the beginning, but then they end up producing a 60-page report and instruction manual and going, wow, we didn't realize we could do that. So it's got to get instilling the belief that they can actually do it. I like to show them a couple of models from previous groups, some good ones and some not so good ones, and say, you guys can achieve this. And they, as you say, when they work together, collaborative, they use each other's strengths and they end up doing a pretty good product. Yeah. Thank you very much.